Chris, I hope you remember, back when I was still taking lessons from you. I was always such a fan of your music, and I always told you, and I still feel this way about it, that your music, it kind of inspires motion. I don't know how else to describe it.
Hmm.
It
That's cool.
and you may remember I actually took one of your songs, and I think it was Numbers, and I put it to some iconic movie car chases. Uh,
Yes,
in
I
fact,
remember.
in
It
fact,
was
one of
Numbers.
them,
Yeah.
yeah, one of them was from the movie Bullet, which is an iconic car chase with Steve McQueen in a 1967 Mustang Fastback. But anyway, I think it even blew you away when
Yeah, it was cool.
when you looked at it. And I did nothing. I did not try hard to fit the music with the action. It just kind of came very organically, and it was really really wild. And more recently, I did the same thing with a video that a friend of mine up in Canada, a fellow named Guillaume Kali, who loves to ski. He's Canadian, right? So he's got a lot of opportunities for skiing, and he skis with a helmet with a GoPro camera on his helmet. And he sent me this video of him going. I mean, it's crazy how fast he's going, and he's going through
Hmm.
trees. And anyway, where I'm going with this
Cool.
is again, I set your music to that, and once
Hmm.
again, it was like made for it. So this is where I'm going with this, Chris.
Hmm.
I've always felt your music would find itself in a movie soundtrack.
Hmm.
I and I wonder how you feel about that. Where do you think? I mean, other than the obvious, and that's recording. Where do you think your music could be best served in a visual format?
Hmm. Well, thanks so much for saying all that. And I think I've always felt really strongly that what I do would have quite the home in that world.
Yeah.
M- Almost all of my songs, frankly, I mean, I'd have to say all of them, start with a particular emotion. I
Right.
can't think of one song that I've written where I thought it was a cool riff, that I just turned into something.
Right.
Everything starts with a particular experience. Even if it just flies off the top of my head, but it's always reflective of where I might be at. And let's face it, that's a very visual thing.
Sure.
And I would, I have been doing, frankly, I've been doing on a smaller level, the licensing thing and
Oh,
involved in
good.
TV,
Good.
in television and so forth, and some
Yeah.
radio and things like that. Films have not really crossed my path yet, but I'm hoping that could potentially change. But I think that would be my dream gig, honestly, would be writing for visuals. I would love to take a scene, someone present me a scene and say, write what this sounds like, because that's very often how I write my songs, like a particular emotion or thing or whatever. Like, what does this sound like?
Right.
How would I bring this particular experience, whatever it might be, how would I bring this to a musical end? And that's what just keeps me writing songs, frankly. So I would love to be able to do that kind of thing. And like I said, you know, I've skimmed the surface of it, and my music has been on MTV and VH1 and Discovery and all these different things that I see on my statements. But
Right.
so I'm hoping for some future opportunities where we can cross paths. Interestingly enough, the Deko people have a sister company that evidently is a comic book distributor or
Oh,
creator or whatever.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
gotta be honest, I've never opened up a comic book in my life.
Me neither.
But when in my meetings with them, apparently comic books are a huge thing.
They
So
are.
um, there is, I guess, something now where you have like a little QR code that's associated with a particular page or storyline, and when you swipe that with your phone, it goes to a song. So there's talk about kind of sneaking me into that world a little bit, the comic book world, so
Sure.
which would be really cool. But I'd love to find my way into that world a little bit more. It's a long game, man. It's a long game doing that, and
Yeah.
like I said, I've been at it for a while. So
Well, I think it's like everything in life. It's just a matter of getting the right person at the right moment to hear something of yours. And
sure,
you know, um, I know so many incredible musicians um, that are unfortunately remain unheard. And I think you would agree. So much of the music business, the success is a little bit of, maybe more than a little bit of luck. Again, just having something you've done be heard by the right person at the right time. And
yeah,
I think that's what
absolutely,
your I think that's what your music needs as far as film is concerned. I think it's just a matter of having the right director, the right editor, the right filmmaker hear your music, because I just think it's a natural for film. And
hmm
and 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 the thought of you writing specifically for film, I think, would be mind blowing. So
yeah,
hopefully you get that opportunity in the future. Staying with the visual aspect of it, you have some incredible videos, Chris, on
thank you.
YouTube.
hmm
And they're always, first of all, highly produced, beautifully done, incredibly artistic. Um, so my question to you, do you enjoy creating videos?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so. As an instrumental artist, like I said, not writing lyrics and not um, not being gifted in that world at all. Uh, but my songs, as I previously mentioned, always start with some sort of emotional experience. So the ability to bring that to life more fully um, is is just another extremely rewarding part of the whole concept.
Right.
It's just another creative medium, which I really quite enjoy. Uh, I think very often someone who writes lyrics the bringing that song fully to life might feel, you know, might feel a little bit more satisfactory when you sing, or when you're using very specific verbiage as compared to, you know, the musical part. So I feel
Right.
like certain songs just need to come to life a little bit bigger, you know.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I really enjoyed the process. You know, it's an interesting process too, because you know you gotta, you know, I love learning, right? So it's just cool to be on that side of the world and kind of see how all that stuff is done, and to be a part of it and kind of witness it and all that. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I've done a few TV show things with my business over the years, and one thing I've always heard actors say that, you know, it's 5 hours of waiting for 5 minutes of filming, and that is so true. Any experience I've had with doing any kind of TV, it's, yeah, sit around for hours upon hours, and then okay, we're ready for you, and it takes about
Yeah,
five
sure.
minutes. It takes
Yeah,
about five
yeah,
minutes, and you know, and then you're
yeah.
done. But
Or you know, or doing the same thing 25 times or something, like,
you're
you know,
right.
because they got to capture it from all the angles. And when you
Exactly.
see film and stuff, and you realize how much goes into that, you see
Oh,
why
no
film
question.
editing is, you know, such an art form, you know.
No question. I just want to go back to something you've mentioned. You've said the word emotion a number of times this afternoon, and
Mhm.
again, reading your liner notes, I'm just going to read just a portion of this. It says, "If from you, if you are holding this record in your hands, you are holding the sounds of my soul." Boy,
Yeah.
if that is not literally offering your emotions to the person holding this record. I
Mhm.
just thought that was so powerful, that one sentence,
Mhm.
and it goes on. But so cool, Chris. Really,
Oh, thank you, Jerry. Appreciate that so much. Thank
you
you.
know, I'm I expose myself for better or worse with my emotions and my feelings and what's going on in my personal life. And
Mhm.
I've never separated my career from my personal life. I'm an open book, whether it be my sobriety or whatever it may be. So you know, I've learned oftentimes the hard way that exposing yourself at the same time does open yourself to detractors and criticism and keyboard warriors. And
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
so
keyboard warrior.
I don't know if it's bravery, but it certainly is. I think very special when you allow that portion of yourself to be exposed a little bit, and it just
Mhm.
makes me, and I think it makes the listener want to know more about your music and know more about you. So I think it's a beautiful thing, and I just appreciate so much that you did that on the liner notes of this
Oh,
album.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jerry. Mm.
Well, my buddy, you know, I certainly don't put myself in your league, but um, every musician, every guitar player I've ever known, including myself, has a guitar in our past that we wish we never sold.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
For me, it was a Ace Frehley signature Epiphone. It wasn't the Gibson. I couldn't afford the Gibson, quite frankly, but it was the
Mhm.
Epiphone Ace Frehley um, signature Les Paul. And I know where it is. I think I could get it back if I ever really, really wanted it. But that said, do you have one in your past that you wish you still had?
Yeah, yeah, my first one,
Yeah, right.
my first one.
Yeah.
I'd give anything for that thing.
What happened to it? What did you sell it? Did you give it away?
Yeah, I sold it for next to nothing to, you know, buy an amplifier or something or other like that, you know, but I needed an
Yeah.
amplifier at the time, and, of course, I could never have known what the significance of that thing was. And frankly, Jerry, it was just, it was a guitar that was made by the father of a friend of my brother's.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't a name brand at all, but
Yeah.
that thing was it was godlike, man, to me at the
Yeah,
time,
sure,
you know,
sure,
at the
yeah,
time. I can still see it like it was yesterday. And, you know, it was very unique for that, the fact that it just was built by some dude. But I didn't particularly remember, you know, cared how it sounded. It was just magic, man. You know, it was
right,
just magic. Just, you know, I would just, you know, literally just, I was inseparable from that thing.
yeah,
And, you know, to turn it into an amplifier or something that I needed. As far as the other guitars, I've had certainly many guitars over the years, and I can't say that I have regret selling any of them. You know, there's always those painful ones. You know, like
sure,
I sold a Les Paul for $200. Yes, because you know, I wanted to buy something else with it. You know,
right,
which is
right,
just criminal. But
yeah,
um, we all have those. But you know, we are. You know, those guitars are part of our story, and that's always we're always with them, and that's always with us. You know, like somewhere in
yeah,
time, those guitars are still mine. You know, because we you know we cross paths, right? So,
yeah,
and that's kind of a cool thing. So sometimes you know practicality sets in, and you have to let something go, and it's you know it's kind of difficult, but you just think, hey, I'm you know always going to be with this thing. I made a lot of music with it. You know, had some great experiences, and now you get to go be with someone else, and they can do that with you. You know, and you know
exactly,
it's cool.
yeah,
It's a cool
it
thing. But
definitely.
that first one, I'd give anything to have that back.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, moving them along does kind of pay it forward a little bit, you know, give someone
Yeah,
else an opportunity to have that same or similar experience, no question.
yeah.
Chris, I'm sure you get this question a lot, but frankly, I don't think I've ever asked you this question, and that is, do you have a favorite Chris Mahoney Project tune? Is there one that maybe you're the most proud of, whether it's for an emotional reason, a personal reason, but is there one that just is your go-to?
Probably Spinning Worlds off the Numbers record. That's what comes to mind off the top of my head. So I'll go with that. You know,
Okay.
that one's probably my favorite, and for the reason that it it exists, and I created it under very different circumstances, and I feel like that song is a is as good as I could have made it representation of what that experience was like. From every so very briefly, there was a lot going on in my world at that time. You know, trying to be a musician and be a teacher, and I was involved in a number of other like legal things, and you know
Sure.
things where I had to be wearing a lot of hats. Right, I had to
Yeah,
wear the
sure.
hat of this person, and wear the hat of that person, and wear the hat of that person, and each one of those things required 100% of my time, and the math doesn't add up there, right? So,
Right, right.
so really, what I was feeling like I was not doing anything particularly well. So, like all artists, you know, we just create off of whatever experience, and you know, I kept seeing myself in all these worlds that needed me, right? And so there was me and all of these things, this revolving around.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I chose, well, how am I going to bring that to musical life? Well, I'm gonna make me a note. This is getting pretty weird, but just stay with me.
No, no.
So I'm gonna make me a no. I mean, what is music except a sound, right? So I'm gonna
Right.
make me a sound. I'm gonna be an A note, right? And all these things are revolving around. So the A note is part of every musical element in that whole song.
Interesting.
In spite of all the changes that take place within the song, A is in there somewhere. And that was hard to do and have it sound musical and somewhat glued together, and sounded like
Yeah,
you know sounded like it was all part of the same song, you know.
yeah.
So I was really proud of how that came out for that reason. And I just think, you know, there's some really cool parts that, you know, it got created. And, you know, the drummer killed it on that session. Spencer Cohn's fantastic drummer who did that one. And I really loved, you know, what he brought to the table that day. And so for that reason and more, that's my favorite.
I love it. Very, very cool. And that is track number 2 on
Yes.
the album numbers. Very,
Mhm.
very cool. Well, my friend, our time is coming to an end, but I do have one more question for you, and that
Please.
is about the business of music. You know,
Oh
it
boy,
is
I
it
can't really.
is well, uh, you know, things have changed again, just from me on the outside looking in over the
Mhm.
last 20, 30 years. Um, you know, when I was a kid, musicians toured because they had to. It was a losing financial proposition, but they
Mhm.
had to tour to support the sales of an album, right?
Yeah.
Now, just the opposite, right? Albums, I mean, this is a rarity, right?
Mhm.
Uh, People aren't buying physical music for the most part, or at least they haven't been. So touring has become the way many musicians can support the machine, so to speak. So anyway, where I'm going with this is, what have you seen? Where have you seen the music business evolve, and is it better or worse from when you first maybe the early bands you were in and you were touring the United States? Is it better? Is it easier for musicians to get heard? Is it easier to support oneself financially? Have at it.
Hmm. Well, I think from my perspective, obviously, I can't really speak from everyone's,
Sure.
but um, from my perspective, exposure is a lot easier. You know,
Yes.
uh, you can arguably record a song in a day, and have it up on Spotify by the end of the day,
Yeah.
and then your market is the whole world, right?
Right.
So on that level, that has inherently some good things about it.
Sure.
So I think exposure is good. I think longevity, though, maybe not so much, like
Right.
because, you know, here today, gone by breakfast time is,
Yeah.
is a thing. It takes so much to, because it's so saturated. I think it's 60,000 songs get uploaded to Spotify a day or something, and that's crazy. So, while I think that the mainstream traditional music industry, let's face it, you could take a lot of pot shots at them, right? Like
Yeah.
anything, right? You could.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with everything comes a little good and a little bad. And I think the good that that music industry did, was recognizing that longevity takes the long game. It takes work, It
Yeah.
takes people being artists, being placed into people's lives for a longer period of time, and
Right.
and I think that has much greater staying power, in the again in the long game of the music world. That said, Tony Levin was on my song without me having to fly to England.
Right. Right.
So there's that. There's so many good things that have come out of that, uh, of the new music business. There's so
Yeah.
many good things. Me personally, the worst of it, you know, which seems to be just getting worse and worse every day. And I hate to sound like this, but you have to be everything.
Yeah.
You have to be everything. You have to write the songs. You have to produce the songs. You have to mix the songs. You have to master the songs. You have to market your songs.
Yeah.
You have to be in charge of your own social media, all of
Yeah.
them. And there's new ones creeping up every day. And then the ones you're spending time on in 6 months, or nobody cares about anymore.
Right.
So
And you have to
that
be in control of your business, right? And people, I mean, that historically in the music business, people have been ripped off because they sold their publishing, not realizing what that meant, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's so difficult to be good at all of those things, because
It
if
is.
you're spending all of your time on your marketing, how are you spending time writing your songs?
Right. Right.
If you're spending all the time, on scouring social media for fans. How are you improving yourself as an instrumentalist?
Right.
There's only 24 hours in a day, and I don't know how some of these people do it. So having Deko support me a little bit has been very, very helpful that way, and they're amazing. So I'm hoping, because I am terrible at all that stuff, and I have no problem admitting it. I am awful at those things. So I just, when I get frustrated, I just resort back to how this started, which is just me and the guitar. Just keep playing. And when I embark on all these things that I'm incapable of doing, I just resort back to that. So I just, with having Deko and those guys with a little team of people, I'm hoping that they're going to do their thing, which is going to be to support their business, and as a result, it's a win-win for everyone. But just to rewind just a little bit, the idea of music being free, or what, like Apple Music is $10 a month for every song you can possibly imagine. Right. So that in and of itself seems like a business. I mean, I'm no businessman, but that just seems like a model that's doomed for failure.
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
You can't open up a pizza shop and give pizzas away for free. Right. Because eventually, what's going to happen? The man's not going to be able to pay his rent, and then the pizza shop closes. Right. So it's very, very simple. I mean, for the third time, I'll say I don't know anything about business, but I got to believe it's defined by you're selling a product or a service, and if you're not selling a product because it's in essence free, or you're selling it for fractions of a penny. Years ago, I had a partnership where we sold guitars and amps. I had a business partner, and we, tried our way at selling handcrafted, fine quality guitars and amps.
Sure.
And that was an exposure to the business world. And if I use that same model, I remember them saying, if you can't make 40% profit on what you sell, you will not sustain yourself in business. Right. 40%. And some of the things, because they were very expensive handmade instruments, there was not 40% of a markup on those things. It was maybe 10 or 15 on the high side. That's before you paid the shipping to get it to your studio.
Sure.
So if Spotify is paying their artist 1/100th of a penny, how can the music business sustain itself? I don't know the answer, but I know, I mean, listen, we can't all be Taylor Swift and Billie Eilish, right? They're not hurting, but and Metallica and who else, but
right.
But again, listen, I wouldn't have it any other way, man. That's the bottom line. I wouldn't have it any other way. I get to, I'm working on a new record right now, in the early stages of it, because I want to be prepared when Deko says, "Hey, what else you got for us?"
Yeah.
But I'm able to mix that record without having to leave my house.
Yeah.
And that's pretty incredible. I mean, I don't have to, I don't have to go to Brooklyn at 1 o'clock in the morning or drive home at 5 in the morning because I'm getting the good rate at the studio. Right. So, and that's 2 hours there and 2 hours back, and considerable time and expense. Right. So, so I would take that trade probably if it was offered to me as a choice. I would take that. But like I said, there's good and bad in everything. So.
Sure. Well, my friend, we finally got this done.
Finally.
And
so cool.
It was well worth the wait, as I knew you would. You killed it. You're just a wonderful guest, and I'm just so pleased that you were my first guest with this new format. But Chris, I can't thank you enough, but not just for this. I thank you for your friendship. Again, the gift of music that you and Mike have given me and shared with me. And I love you, my friend. And I hope this conversation continues. We should not wait so long to do this or have to record something. I need to back up to New York and just sit with you for a little while. I would love to do that. So again, thank you, my friend. I love you.
Thank you. Love you back. See you soon. Be well.